This is Chapter 3 on designing learning experiences. There's not a direct relationship between the ability to do something and the ability to teach something. A good athlete may not be also a good teacher. One of the reasons that this is so is that teachers must be able to translate the content to be taught for the learners. They must know the content in a different way, and they must be able to design learning experiences to lead the learner to higher levels of ability with that content. This chapter will help you design learning experiences for learners and will help you understand the content of physical education in a different way. You might ask yourself this question: what is a learning experience? Well, it is a practice task. It's a set of instructional conditions and events that give structure to student experience and is related to a particular set of teacher objectives. Teachers have many options in the design of learning experiences and moving tasks. Learning experiences can be designed to individualize the content for the learner, to give learners a decision-making role, or to focus student responses on a psychomotor, an affective, or a cognitive process. Some questions to consider are: should the teacher demonstrate the skill, walk the students through the skill step by step, or teach concepts related to the skill and have the students then apply them to their practice? The second thing is, should all students do the same task, or should arrangements be made for different ability levels? In other words, should you differentiate instruction according to the different levels of ability in your classes? Should the task be fun? Should it be task-oriented, or should it be a relaxed type of task? How should students be grouped for practice? Should they be grouped in partners? Should they be grouped in groups of 3? Should they be grouped in groups of 5? Or should they practice it on their own? Another question is, how will student performance be assessed? How will each learning experience be assessed so that you'll know whether you're reaching the lesson objectives or not? In looking at the value of learning experiences, we have to look at the specific nature of the content and whether that content can be linked to the objectives of the lesson and or to the broader program goals. You also have to look at the characteristics of students, the contextual factors that are part of what makes up students being different from each other. You also have to look at the facilities and the equipment, how the students were organized for the activity, how the space was arranged, how much equipment they might have had, and what does the teacher do during the activity while they're doing their learning experience. The last thing is, we also have to look at how much time the class and each student spent in each activity. This slide shows an example of a learning experience. There are 2 offensive players versus 1 defender in a soccer practice or a learning experience practicing soccer. For the 2 offensive players versus 1 defender, you can have a learning experience that would be half speed without a goal. You could also have full speed without a goal using a fake, some type of fake. You could add a goal and then go back to full speed and count the number of passes made in between. You could also have a learning experience, 2 offensive players versus 2 defensive players. Same as above, except add off the ball types of movements, screens and fakes, and so on. This is just an example of some different ways that you can have learning experiences and a progression that might go along with it. When designing your lessons, you have a series of learning experiences or learning tasks that you'll be giving to the students during that lesson. You'll be planning for those ahead of time. There are 4 criteria that evaluate a learning task or a learning experience for their potential for learning for the students. Does the task or experience have the potential to improve motor performance or activity skills? Does the learning task promote maximal participation or practice time? Sometimes we call that maximum opportunity for practice. Does the learning task, is it appropriate for the experience level of all students? Are you able to differentiate the instruction within that learning experience so that students from all ability levels are able to accomplish and be the task and be successful? And the last thing is, for a learning experience, does it have the potential to integrate all three learning domains? For every learning experience you have or movement task, they all must have a specific intent. They need to have what students need to do what's related to the content. There are three parts that focus a movement task: the content dimension of the task, the goal setting dimension of the task, and of course the organizational arrangements of a task. Those are all things that you can plan for. This is an example of a movement task. Practice the overhead set with a partner to see how long you can keep the ball going with your partner at a high level. If the ball falls to a low level, catch it and start again. So the questions are: what is the content part of the movement task, the goal orientation of the movement task, and what is the organization of the movement task? The content is the part that says practice the overhead set. The goal orientation is the number of consecutive passes without losing control. And the organization is practice with a partner with no other arrangements being explicit. The content dimension is very important. The substance of the task are things like passing the ball to a partner, playing softball, or self-assessing one's performance in soccer. The choice of content is based, of course, on the unit and the lesson objectives. The progression is to be able to have students learn motor skills in a progression building on simple to more complex. The quote here is important. Teachers select the content of a task because they think that having students experience that content is important to a learning goal. Thinking about the content of your learning experiences, you should be thinking about these questions when you select the content. Will this learning experience contribute to an objective? Is the experience valuable for students? Are some students not challenged by what I've given them to do, and therefore do I need to make it more challenging? Or are students more bored, or is this experience too difficult for some and therefore they will get frustrated and start acting out? Should I redesign the content to include both cognitive and affective learning as well as just psychomotor learning? The goal-setting dimension of learning experiences involves communicating to the learner the intent of the task. What is the purpose of the task, and why do you want the learners to be able to practice that particular task? And is it a closed skill or is it an open skill? And how involved does that mean that you're going to be as you're teaching? Most teachers want students to acquire proficiency at motor skills, but the problem is that most teachers think that students are going to get perfect after a while, and that's not necessarily the goal of most students. Students want to see the meaningfulness of skills, and why do I need to do it this way? Why is it important for me to learn this? Goal setting helps learners focus their work and evaluate their own progress. It gives them a goal or a bar to go toward or to try to reach while they're learning their skills. It's a way to also refine tasks and to make them a little more efficient. And it's also a way to help apply them in a game situation. An example of a goal setting type of learning experience is: count how many ways you can find to balance on 3 parts of your body. When you are ready, ask your partner to assess your form using the checklist. Those are examples of trying to set goals for students in learning experiences. This is the end of the first podcast, but there is a second podcast to go to finish up Chapter 3.